job. I thought they were terrific together, and some lovely chemistry. And you know, I had my reservations about a couple of the characters. I wasn't so sure about Bones. And I shouldn't say this, I wasn't crazy about Uhura, you know, if I'm going to be honest. I thought they were a little weak. But it looked great, you know, and they were engaging, and I'm sure there'll be another one, and possibly a third. And then I would imagine that at some point in Paramount's, you know, future, they'll, you know, either ask those actors to come and make a TV show if they're not being offered any work elsewhere as actors, or they'll, you know, recast it and do some TV version of it. It's all about the numbers. But I guess at this point, you know, UPN was launched on ultimately on Next Generation, wasn't it? I mean, that was the flagship show. So it's just finding a network that would, you know, show something like that. Because I think the money you need, well, maybe not actually. I mean, maybe you know, Battlestar Galactica has been hugely successful on, you know, way less money than it took to make our show, and they shoot in Vancouver. And unfortunately, you know, when our show looked like it was gonna, you know, when our network was gonna be cancelled, there was talk about going to Vancouver, but you know, I mean, the enterprise cost between $3 and $4 million an episode. That's a ton of money. You know, the special effects alone was, you know, at least a third of the budget, and then my hefty fee. And I guess I don't think they would have got Scott to go to Vancouver, to be honest. He had 2 small children at the time, and you know, he had no real desire to go so far from home. But it's feasible that you could actually shoot a show called Star Trek in Vancouver for way less money, and then, you know, syndicate it like any one of these other shows that they're doing these days. There's a market out there, I mean, you know, for sure. So I would not be at all surprised in the next 5, 7 years if that's some version of the Star Trek, you know, franchise comes back. I mean, to answer that young man's question to start with, we all owe our careers ultimately to George Lucas. I'll doff my cap to that. I mean, it was definitely, you know, the massive success of Star Wars that reinvented this whole sci-fi genre. And the story goes that, you know, Paramount had their emergency meeting after the opening week of Star Wars, and, you know, what are we going to do? They're all headless chickens. What the hell are we going to do? And it was some young guy at Paramount that went, don't we own a show like that? And that's when they went knocking on Gene Roddenberry's door. And that's how Rick Berman got, they put Rick Berman, he was an accountant. He was a junior executive accountant at Paramount. And he was put in charge of making sure that the crazy, zany, wacky guy didn't spend too much money making this Star Trek movie. And then Gene had formulated the idea of the Next Generation, and they started shooting that, and then he passed away. And basically Rick Berman kind of looked around him and went, okay, that's mine. And that's the story. And then, you know, like pieces of a jigsaw, Brannon Braga came to Paramount as an intern writer, literally. And he was only meant to be there for a few months, and he wrote a couple of spec scripts. And Rick Berman recognized the talent, and he went, you sit here. And for 17 years, it was written by Brannon Braga and Rick Berman. And that's the story. All right, guys, it's been a pleasure.